Thank you. Good morning, Councilmember. Kassakhian, I know you have a busy schedule, or excuse me, Kassakhian, I beg your pardon. Good morning. I know you have a very busy schedule. You are in Sacramento at a conference. So thank you so much for your time and for being with us here today. Something that was of special interest to us was in Glendale, it's the upcoming Tenant Landlord Ad hoc committee. I was wondering if maybe you could describe this. What is it? What does the city want to accomplish with it, and how can we help?
Thank you very much. And can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. You're right. I did just land in Sacramento just 20 minutes ago. I've checked into the lovely Quality Inn hotel by the convention center, and I hopped on this call because I always enjoy speaking to my realtor friends and updating you on what's going on. I think Greg Astorian just did a great job in summarizing some of the Sacramento legislation. Obviously, it'll be topics of discussion among myself and other city leaders today. In fact, I would say our Southwest flight flying out of Burbank was filled with all city managers and council members, and we were all comparing each other's RENA numbers. I was sitting next to the South Pasadena city manager, who was telling me that they have to add 2,000 units of housing to South Pasadena. And I don't know where you add 2,000 units in a small city like South Pasadena. But I was also complaining about our numbers, which are about 13,300. But let me talk to you about what the city council has done. During a joint meeting in August, City Council and our Housing Authority, which I chair, we formed an ad hoc landlord or housing provider and resident ad hoc committee, the Landlord Tenant Committee. This committee is going to be made up of Glendale landlords and tenants, and it's going to serve as a conduit for citizen input, also analyze and recommend options on Glendale landlord tenant rental housing issues. There were a lot of new laws and policies that were put in place by previous councils, and this committee will hopefully be able to review those and see, what has been working, what has not. The most important thing that I noticed when I was city clerk was that when these discussions were happening, no party seemed to be very happy about the outreach that the city staff was doing, or even sometimes the recommendations by staff. Because let's be honest, I mean, none of us on the council really, with the exception of maybe one person who used to own property, has had rental properties. I don't believe staff has, so we don't quite understand. We can only understand the challenges that property owners face by talking to other to property owners and listening to them, and also the challenges that the tenants face in an increasingly stressed housing market. And quite honestly, it's been stressed since the 1940s. I believe since 1947, California has experienced a housing shortage. So we have created an ad hoc committee, which will consist of 7 members. 3 of them would be people who are tenants. 3 of them would be landlords, and there would be 1 community member who would be, I don't want to use the term neutral party, but for lack of a better description, we would say someone who would be perceived as a neutral party. And it would be for a 12-month term, meeting once a month, tentatively scheduled to take place on the 4th Wednesday of every month at 6 p.m. Meetings will be broadcast on GTV6. There will be a stipend of $50 per meeting for the participants. That's something else that I push for. I want to make sure that all of our boards and commissions receive a stipend, a modicum of financial compensation for the time that they have given so freely to us. And there is, I'll just briefly tell you some of the issues that they're going to be reviewing. Rental rights programs, recommending any possible changes or tweaks to those ordinances, discussing and developing best practices for education, outreach, and marketing for issues that pertain to landlords and tenants, and discussing and evaluating voluntary dispute resolution programs for landlords and tenants so that we can have a market that works for everyone, both the consumer and the provider, and we don't have to spend a valuable city time trying to reinvent the wheel. We can listen to those folks who are most impacted by this, get their feedback and their input, and help us craft better policies moving forward. Hopefully, we don't have to craft any new policies. Hopefully, we will see a stabilization in the market. I'm hoping so. And if you haven't applied yet, but would like to, I recommend that you go to, just go into Google and put Glendale Housing Ad Hoc Committee, AD-HOC, ad hoc meaning it's not permanent. You should come across that. I'm unfortunately on my cell phone, otherwise I would share the link in a chat. Are there any questions?
Thank you for that. I just have one quick question, then I'll ask if Greg Historian wants to follow up with additional question as well. But so you mentioned there's an application process. I think I did see it just on the front page of the Glendale City website, so it's very prominent. And I understand there's a deadline to apply, isn't that right? It's coming up soon?
Yes, the deadline is 5:30 p.m. on October 12th, 2021. So there's still some time. But I don't recommend that people delay.
Don't wait. Are you required to be a resident of the city of Glendale?
For the landlord portion, no. For the tenant portion, yes.
Got it.
I don't believe you have to be, and I'll have to double check that. But the one thing that I did ask, and I believe another colleague asked, is that we have seasoned landlords. And what I mean by that is someone who's at least owned rental property for more than 3 years in the city. And the reason I believe that's important is because the last 2 years have been fluctuation. It's been very chaotic. And I don't know, it wouldn't be reflect the traditional experience of a landlord in Glendale.
Right, thank you. Greg Historian, did you want to follow up, maybe ask something that I missed and see if there's other questions from our group today?
Welcome aboard, Councilmember Kassakhian, or should I say Mayor Pro Tem right now.
Thank you.
Ardy, the question that I have is, maybe I'm out of turn, but you had mentioned to me that you're interested in putting a housing summit together.
Absolutely. That's fine. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. And we have offered you to sponsor, Glendale Association of Realtors to sponsor that.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of information, because I think that's a heck of a event. It would be a very good event if we have all the right people in there. And in fact, on the chat room, we have people talking about putting something together that involves the developer, it involves the realtor, it involves the city, the planner, and the tenant, and so forth. So please give us some feedback on that.
So the rotation to be mayor has now been somewhat formalized. And in the past, there was the ability to circumvent a process that had not been written or codified in any way. And certain people were skipped over, they were left out of the rotation. It created some resentment and didn't really create a more congenial and collegial environment for the council members to work with one another. I mean, how would you feel if you were up for something and that you really were looking forward to and you were skipped over for political or personal reasons? So for that reason, I asked that we have a rotation that gives everyone an opportunity to serve as mayor that was fair and equitable. And we have that now. So per that, the Housing Authority chair will serve as mayor next. I am the Housing Authority chair, but the Housing Authority chair had always been seen as this kind of symbolic placeholder. You run the Housing Authority meetings, but the Housing Authority meetings are in the afternoons, not a lot of engagement, even though there's tremendous impact of decisions made at Housing Authority meetings, as well as joint meetings where we study development agreements, affordable housing projects, etc. So I felt that given the time that we're in now, what we're facing as a region, it is important for us to hear from different voices and have I call it a summit, but just a meeting of the minds, which we don't often get to do. As council members, we're often insulated from a lot of things. You know, we listen to what staff tells us, and unless council members go out of their way to interact with members of the public or have their own kitchen cabinets, it's very hard to hear from experts, and especially from regional experts and people who are doing interesting and different things to help alleviate the housing crisis that we're facing, or the housing shortage. So with that, I've asked the city manager and I've asked the housing staff to organize a summit. I was hoping to do it in October. Now it seems like it will be November, and the more I think about it, it may end up getting pushed out to January if we want to do it the right way. It would not be anything huge, and it would not be intended to overshadow anyone else's work on the council, but it would be an opportunity to bring in experts, developers, people in the real estate community, people in the nonprofit sector, people who are working affordable in the affordable housing and homeless outreach sector, to see what each of them are doing, talk about their work, also to talk about what the city's doing, some of the programs that we have, and how we can alleviate some of the housing stress that we're all experiencing. Because the reality of it is, I think once we come out of COVID, once we come out of what I'm anticipating, unfortunately, to be a very chaotic eviction cycle, then we're going to see, I think, prices continue to go up. They continue to go up in other parts of the state and the region. We should be prepared for it. We should have a plan moving forward. I don't know if we can add 13,300 more units to Glendale. I certainly am not an advocate of that, but we are going to have more development and more density in certain places, and we have to plan for it accordingly and make sure that we have a variety of types of housing available for all levels of income.
Very good. So I'll be remiss if I do not share with the group that when we had you visit with our LGLR and our concern about rent registry, we had discussions about it. You were forthright. You had an idea that rent registry does not serve anyone, and it's a problem looking for a solution. And I just want, on behalf of Glendale Association of Realtors, to thank you for your vote, your affirmative vote that really it doesn't serve anyone at the council level. For that, we owe you a debt of gratitude, and it's important that I articulated that in front of all 50 or so people here today. So we appreciate that.
So thank you. I think it was the right vote. I've always said my goal on council, for as long as I'm able to serve, is to do the right thing for the right reasons, and hopefully do it the right way. If we can get all three of those goals in alignment, then we can get good policy made. The rent registry was not necessary and not a good idea. Maybe it is for other communities, I won't judge, but certainly in Glendale, I don't think it was necessary. It was a solution looking for a problem. I'm also not for increasing or extending any moratoriums. I think that we know what we know, and we know what if people have not adjusted to COVID by now and the realities, I don't know what will change in the coming months. I think people ought to have negotiated with their landlords agreements. I think most landlords want to have good relationships with their tenants, and when they have good tenants, they don't want to see them go. So I think that, but I do think that there is going to be some volatility. I think we can all agree on that, and there's some nervousness and anxiety on all our parts, but I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic. I do think that California is on the upswing. Listen, folks, whatever you hear from other people about people moving out of California, for every person who's moving out, there's someone else moving in. There was an interesting article by the economist, Paul Krugman, in the New York Times. Not someone I always agree with, but as an economist, he knows far more about this than I do. And it was talking about the gentrification of California, how the people who are moving are people of a certain income level, and the people who are moving in are higher income earners. And that's going to, I believe, drive up real estate and home prices. So it's something that we do have to face. It is a reality. And the article in the New York Times was titled "The Gentrification of Blue America." An interesting read if you have time.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Councilman Kassakhian, that concludes my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We always appreciate your talking to us.